Hello and welcome to episode 92 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Basically just two regular dudes drinking some irregular beers, talking about Magic the Gathering, and in particular, their online client, MTG Arena.
That is right. And each episode we both bring a beer, we drink Jeff's, then drink mine, rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic, and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
All right. Here we've got a staple of the Toronto beer scene. This is called Space Invader. It's an IPA. It's meant to be like a juicy kind of IPA, 6%. And it's made by Amsterdam, one of the oldest craft breweries in Toronto. So much so that I've almost just come to see them as being a macro brewery. Even if that's not actually true, and just whenever I see their stuff, I'm like, oh, Amsterdam, yeah, that's going to be everywhere. So, I expect to see it as often or more often than I see stuff from a macro brewery. So it's like Amsterdam and Mill Street. I almost don't even think of as being a Toronto microbrewery.
Yeah, it's true. I've also come to feel that way, and this might be... How many Amsterdam beers have we done? Maybe 2? We did Bone Shaker and then this one now. I can't remember another one at the moment. But this is, you can find this most everywhere. Though, if you're in the Toronto area, their brewery or their brew house is right on the lake. So it's actually kind of a nice spot to go to. So it is worth, I do like it. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a nice place.
Yeah. Anyway, we have lots of magic news. Okay, so this last week, Dominaria United Alchemy cards were finally released into the wilds. So, after all the major tournaments that we had that were about alchemy, all those kinds of things, it's good that we have some new cards just to spice things up instead of having it before the tournament to make it exciting.
Lame.
Yeah. Some big kind of things about this. So they're doing this new thing. This is the second time we've had... is it the second time? I think so. I think we did this in New Capenna. But this is where they had the alchemy cards come out, and then you could draft them when you were... they had special alchemy drafts. I don't know, Jeff, if you played on Thursday, but did things get fucked up real bad. They released this patch, and then people started drafting not only just the alchemy Dominaria, but the regular Dominaria, and then drafts got just completely screwed up for the whole day. People would start, and then there'd be a bunch of problems in the draft, and people were getting booted from their drafts, or their all the images were wrong, and everything was going haywire. And then during everyone's drafts, even if your draft went well and you were playing your games, they shut all of them down and kicked everybody out of all the drafts they were in. A lot of stories of people 3-0 who got prizes for going 3-3, people who are 6-1 excited to get 7, getting kicked out, all that stuff. Luckily, everything was remedied, and Wizards gave out draft tokens to everybody that got screwed, which still... I feel like you might need a little bit more than that. That kind of sucks. But another release day that did not go very well. So let's just put that in the column of things got fucked up on this release day once again.
Yeah, it's more at this point that I'm surprised if release day goes smoothly rather than surprised when things don't.
With that as well, there are a bunch of alchemy rebalances. To a bunch of cards that are in standard and alchemy, but it's a little weird. I don't know why they did this. Jeff, do you want to
it's very strange.
Just tell us a little bit? I mean, it's a small article. I didn't really read all the cards. Jeff didn't read all the cards because why would we when they begin talking to us about how they wanted to fix the draft format for Streets of New Capenna?
Basically, there was one cool announcement about Historic, so essentially the standard cards that were changed for alchemy, nerfed was the word I was looking for, have for the most part been unnerfed for Historic. So you'll get your regular Goldspan Dragon back, you get your regular Cadillac back in Historic, which I know a lot of people were complaining about, that the long-term value of their wild cards is being impacted by alchemy rebalances. And this seems like a normal way to or a reasonable way to address that concern. Of course, Alrund's Epiphany still nerfed.
Yeah.
And that's because Alrund's Epiphany was stupid.
It is stupid. It doesn't. It's not that it was stupid. It is stupid and always will be stupid. And I'm glad that it is fixed.
Well, it's been rebalanced, so it's not stupid now.
But that's true.
It just sucks.
Well, yeah, so it means it's still stupid. I don't like it. It's too powerful or not good at all.
All right, fair enough.
It's just the worst. So this is something people were worried about going into when Alchemy was first announced almost 1 year ago. So they are basically bringing all the cards that got nerfed. They are being restored to their former glory in Historic for the most part. And all the cards that were buffed, talking about all the dungeon cards, will stay buffed in Historic. So they're only interested in making the good cards that they nerfed back into good cards, and then the bad cards that they buffed to be good cards are still good cards. So that's a good philosophy.
Yeah.
I think so. That's one win.
Yeah, I did have a question about this. Like, moving forward, do you think nerfs just won't be applied to Historic? Or is this sort of the new pattern? They're going to nerf it for its time and standard and then unnerf it, assuming it wasn't like a ban-worthy card like Alrund's Epiphany.
Yeah, I think that they're getting to... Yes, I think they're going to continue this pattern. And once we get to a point where they've been able to put all of the cards through their rebalancing system, they won't ever have any problems. The only cards that will maybe see immediate bans or have to see bans are cards that got injected directly into Historic, which we're going to talk a little bit about later in this episode. So I'm not sure about that, but I think Historic might still see some bans for some cards that just go straight to.
Yeah, but like presumably the reason to do this is to avoid confusion. Like, if there's only one, if there's a standard Goldspan Dragon is different from Alchemy Goldspan Dragon. I guess what I'm asking, like, why is Historic version the same as Alchemy and then switched later? Is this indicating that they might just say, listen, when we nerf something for Alchemy, we just won't apply that nerf in Historic now? Or are they still going to always be like, we'll try to undo any nerfs when they rotate? Because it feels like they're saying these cards weren't too good for Historic, so why were they nerfed in Historic in the first
Got
place?
it. Okay, now I understand. So I don't know. It does seem like right now we have, of our constructed formats, there are like two that are that rotate, one that is close to paper and one that is digital only, and then two eternal formats, one that's close to paper and one that is digital only. So then they want both of the digital only formats to be as close as possible without having too many cards that are different. So the big differences are paper cards don't change, they only get bans. Digital cards can be rebalanced, and they don't want to make too many differences between both of those formats. So if you're an Alchemy Historic player, is one, maybe they call that digital player. I don't know what that, maybe they give them names, right, like they did all the other ones. That person only they have one version of each card, and maybe they're banking on the standard. There isn't a standard player and a Historic player. There's Standard, Explorer, and Alchemy and Historic.
Right, so I guess it's like, all right, digital only, there's only one version of the digital only card. Non-digital only, there's only one version of that. But then once it rotates out of Alchemy, they don't want Historic version to be different than Explorer. There's only one version of the nerfed card, or no longer nerfed card across that. But the buffed cards will still be different. I don't know. This feels like we're changing things on the Historic only player. But it generally is probably for the better. Like, I don't think any of these cards break, like you were saying, when you thought that's what I asked. None of these cards are breaking Historic wide open, so it's totally fine. Give them to the players that like them, instead of having a nerfed card that has essentially no chance of seeing play in Historic.
Yeah, and for the most part, when we're talking about like a lot of the rebalance cards now, what I was just saying is that like they rebalanced a ton of new Capenna commons and uncommons for fucking no reason. I don't know. Just because they were trying to rebalance the draft format that we haven't drafted in 5 months? Like, why are we caring about this. Like, people are talking about the Brothers War. We're not interested in going back and doing new Capenna drafts, which was a shitty draft format. Basically, like, people hated it. So why are we trying to fix it now?
Yeah.
What a waste of resources. I don't understand.
It's so strange. And the crazy thing, too, is it says historic card rebalancing and goes over, what we just talked about. Mm-hmm. And then it says standard card rebalancing. And then the whole standard card rebalancing is a bunch of random commons and uncommons and junk rares from Capenna. And all of the reasoning they provide is, like you said, about fixing the draft format under the big standard card rebalancing title. None of this affects Alchemy.
Yeah. And
I don't think.
And it doesn't affect standard. Why would you say standard if you're talking about Alchemy in the first place? It just
right, like historic and standard.
So this article came out about a week ago, October 5th. It just I don't understand. Like, what are they doing? It just continued to be like we were saying, who is this historic only player? I'm sure you're out there, but historic is the dumpster of Arena. It just gets just shoveled cards of like whatever's fucking left on the plate. They just dump it into historic and say, have fun with whatever that is. And we've said this for 2 years. Like, that's what historic is. So I don't know. It just continues to be the same. I don't know.
Yeah. And then it has all these remnants of this weird era where they tried to make it the competitive format. And so there was some weird like tunings and bannings and cards specifically injected. It's just super weird.
It's weird.
I'm sure some people love historic, but I mean, you gotta admit what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's there so that people can play all of their cards.
No, it's there so I can play auras every once in a while, and that's about it. That's what historic is for. I think that's what it is, because I can't play auras anywhere else meaningfully.
Yeah, and so I can play black mid-range decks.
So it just continues to be Alchemy is not what they told us it was going to be almost a year ago, which was supposed to be fixed standard. It is not fixed standard. It is its own format. Where they rebalance commons and uncommons for the draft format. That has nothing to do with Alchemy. Anyway.
They're still do people still play this draft format? Everyone's going to be playing the new one, right?
No, but
even if they want to do...
You can't. You physically can't. It's Arena.
Oh, right, of course. You can't. That's how they get you.
That's the thing.
We rebalance. That's why it doesn't work. They turned it off, so you have to go play the format they rebalanced.
Yeah, it's not like... Can you do this on Magic Online where you just draft whatever format you want, and as long as you get people to fire it? It does go in rotation as well, right? So
yeah, there's only certain ones offered because some of them just wouldn't.
Exactly. Fire. So like, why are you rebalancing a format? Maybe they're bringing it back for like some flashback draft, but nobody really wants to play that. I don't know.
It's probably the next Arena Championship format or something.
Rebalanced Alchemy. Streets of New Capenna.
Like January, new Capenna.
It's going to be
Alchemy
Worlds.
Rebalanced format draft.
They're going to have all the Worlds player do Alchemy Rebalanced draft format. Fuck. Like, I don't...
Yeah, right before the release of like Phyrexia.
Honestly, this just feels like they were working on this back in June, and then they finally got it to finished. And they're like, hey,
this seems like a failed experiment that they've released for some reason.
Why? Just scrap it, throw it away. But what they, everything they throw away just goes to historic, like I just said. So anyway,
that's right.
It's frustrating. Anyway, Jeff, let's talk about something that's not as frustrating and might be a good chunk of this episode. But we had a banned and restricted announcement. Jeff, tell us what happened.
Well, in Standard, the Meat Hook Massacre is banned.
Whoa,
that's a bombshell. We'll get into that in a little bit because there's another banning, which is Yorion. This was banned in Modern. This one's somewhat interesting because, neither of us play a ton of Modern, but I know that Yorion tended to be used just in like multicolored good stuff decks, and it was not really a Yorion it wasn't using Yorion the way it was intended, which is like a blink deck, essentially. It was just using it as a free card in a card advantage based mid-range deck that had some, blinking Omnath is still good. But for the most part, it was like, I have so many good cards that I don't care about the 80 card limit, and the extra card in my hand is worth much more than that, so we'll play Yorion. And I think they don't like that. That's not the point of companions. Every companion that takes a hit, it's because that's how they're being used. They're just, the free card is so good that as long as the deck building constraint is like manageable, which certainly building an 80 card deck in Modern, especially since now we know how to construct 80 card decks, we know what the mana base should look like, we know everything. It's just so easy that like they might as well, and somehow it gives you a little actually more, like you have more flexibility in your main deck, because now you have, it's interesting to like think about this, but your deck almost gets a little better because you have a different percentage of sweepers than you can actually have access to in a 60 card deck. And normally, that might not be worth it, but because you get the extra card, it's just definitely worth it, and it's a freebie. So, and then on top of all that, they want paper Modern tournaments to come back, and nobody wants to shuffle an 80 card deck.
Yes.
I think that's an extra reason they put in there, which is interesting. Commander players are laughing at that.
Yeah.
But,
well, so this is the funny thing. So this has been memes all over Twitter and everything, is about, Yorion got killed because people don't want to shuffle 80 card decks, which the reasoning behind it is that Modern is such a fetch land heavy format that you shuffle your deck a lot, and a lot more than in Commander. So that's really what they're saying. But overall, it's exactly what, the companions were broken inherently when they brought them into the mechanic, where the mechanic had to be, nerfed. And then from that, we still have companions that are too strong. So overall, it just seems like companion was just too much. But the question now begs that, like, since they're saying, this card need to be banned because of shuffling problems, does that mean that they're also going to ban it in Pioneer if that becomes a bigger deck, which it's starting to? Or, is it going to be banned in Pioneer but not banned in Explorer, because Explorer is an arena format where shuffling doesn't take time, but paper it does? This is what I want to know.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if it's the shuffling thing, when, like you said, when there's no fetch lands, it becomes a smaller issue. Like in Modern, you're legitimately, at least in the first few turns, shuffling your deck like 2-3 times a turn. Like, it's crazy. Everything shuffles. And so, we won't have that issue in Pioneer. But I think the real issue is just that it just becomes that these multicolor mid-range decks might as well play this card as a freebie, and then you kind of, it's just not that fun that this card's just always there. And it's against the spirit of how the card was designed. So I think eventually that will get it. And if that's right, then it'll get it in both Pioneer and Explorer. But, in principle, it shouldn't even have to be banned in Pioneer, because there's so much less shuffling in Pioneer.
That's true.
If shuffling were truly the, main reason.
If that's really... So that's interesting, because, we had Cat Oven issues because of just gameplay problems with it, which is like the amount of clicks on Arena that you have to deal with. So now we're getting one in paper. It's just interesting when they ban a card, and a big reasoning is not actually the gameplay, which it's true. It's very strong, and that's why it's an issue, because if this was a card that didn't show up in top 8s all the time, you wouldn't see it as much, and so then it wouldn't magnify the issues with it. It would just be like, I played against this opponent that had such a huge deck, it took them forever to shuffle, but it wasn't every matchup I had. But then if you play the deck constantly, then you're like, this is a fucking problem.
The other thing, in competitive events, you have to shuffle your opponent's decks too, right? So it's like, I shuffle, then I have to present it for you, and then you are supposed to shuffle it, which doubles the amount of shuffling that goes on in like a casual Commander game.
That's true. And especially with casual Commander, if you shuffle once, you can do it during 3 other persons' turns, because there's, twice as many opponents. So
Right.
or whatever.
And you could probably do some sort of like, hey, I'm going to fetch a forest and then also do this. I'll just get them both and shuffle once. And you guys do your thing, which
helps.
Is not gonna. You're not going to do that in a competitive
tournament
1v1 table.
Exactly. I did see something on Twitter that was a judge talking about the time that they had to deck check a Battle of Wits deck, and they had a team of judges do it, and it took them 20 minutes. So imagine like a Battle of Wits deck was like top tier, and everyone's playing Battle of Wits, and they have to deck check everybody. Oh my god. If you don't know Battle of Wits, it's this like blue card that says if you have over 200 cards in your deck, then you win the game. Is it 200 or 250?
It's 200, I believe, but the decks tend to be 250-ish because you need to like have Battle of Wits in play and still have 200 cards in your library to win.
Yeah. I've only played against one once when I was a child, and I was like, what the fuck is this card? Yeah, it's 200. So yeah, their deck's 250, 260 cards. So they have a regular deck plus the 200 cards that help them win. It's just like, oh.
And again, I've played against it on Magic Online, so it's like, in that situation, none of that matters.
Exactly.
Like Magic Online makes sure they're not playing more than 4 of any card. It makes sure that they actually have 200 left in their library. They win or lose,
you don't have to literally
It does all the annoying stuff for you. You don't have to shuffle it. Yeah, right. To even decide the winner, you have to like count the number of cards left in the library. Then you're gonna not just take your opponent's word for it. You're gonna count their deck too. So you're gonna get a judge over to count the deck. Like it's.
I mean, to be fair, counting cards to see who wins is kind of exciting because you're like, how many cards are more like left in their hand, and
199.
Fuck yes. You fetched one too many times or whatever. Like that's exciting.
Yeah,
but
it's because I surgical extracted.
Yeah, that's right. I milled the top card of your library that one time. So that's cool. But anyway, it's just interesting to see. Obviously, we don't play Modern, and this is basically what we're grasping from it. But you can always see when other formats start banning cards. Like, is it going to get banned in the format that you play? So now we're going to start looking at Explorer, being like, is Yorion going to be a problem?
And Modern does tend to be the trickle down source because like the bar is so high in Legacy. If it gets banned in Legacy, a lot of the time it's either just like way too good, or more likely it's not a card that is even played, like legal in the newer formats. It's like one of these Modern Horizons 2 crazy things, or like a really old card or something.
Yeah. But
so Modern is really if a card that we're currently playing on like Arena in Explorer or something is getting banned in Modern, you probably should think that its time is nigh. Like maybe a few years, but it's not going to be here forever.
Yeah, and once again, luckily for us Arena players, if you have copies already, you're going to get reimbursed. You don't have to worry about if you should sell it or not, or switch decks because it might get banned or whatever. That's a paper person's problem. Yeah. That's not us. So
that's going to be like random wild cards just given back to me at some point, and I'll forget why, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I had Yorion.
Sick. But I only had one copy because why would I craft 4?
I had that in my collection.
So does that say, should we craft 4 Yorions right now?
Yeah.
I know what you should do. You should craft 4 Meat Hook Massacres.
Okay, yeah.
So because Meat Hook Massacre is getting banned in Standard...
Ooh, I'm getting some wild cards for that.
We're getting wild cards, mythic wild cards. So if you don't have 4 already, hopefully you're listening to this episode before the ban gets stated or instated. That's the word, yeah. So you will get wild cards for the amount of copies you have of Meat and Massacre. However, you can play it in all the different formats, including Alchemy, Historic, and Explorer. So might as well just get some free wild cards. It's great. It's still playable in all those formats.
Or really, you're getting free meat hooks that you can play in other formats.
Sorry, that's true.
Because you're spending your wild cards now and then getting them back. So yeah, you get free copies of the Meat Hook Massacre, which you may want to play at some point in Explorer or Historic. You never know. Like I'm always like, I'm never gonna play this card, and then I do end up playing it. So glad I did the whole wild card trick. And when you know it's getting banned, there's no reason not to. I wouldn't advise it for Yorion because that ban is who knows how long away, and you're not gonna play 4 copies of Yorion ever in anything. So
that's true.
Definitely don't do that for Yorion.
The other thing, this is something that affects you specifically, but standard at this moment that we're talking is kind of weird because we know that Meat Hook Massacre is banned. However, you can't play standard the way it's going to be this weekend for the qualifier weekend because the ban isn't effective until Thursday. So we're recording on Tuesday night. It's just a weird time where people are trying to figure out what the standard format is, specifically Jeff, for this tournament this weekend. And you can't because Arena hasn't really done it. However, MTGO, if you play MTGO, they have put the ban into effect. So it's just an Arena thing because we patch things on Thursdays and that's how it is. So it's a weird fake standard or old standard for the time being. Makes me not want to play standard.
Yeah, because my experience with when this happens is like everyone's still going to be playing Meat Hook. Like when this has happened in the past, everyone's still just playing it. I don't know if it's like a gotta get your games in while you can kind of mentality, or they just don't care or don't know, or they're just trying to rank up and like win some challenges.
I think it's just they don't know
while they still have that deck. Yeah, or exactly right. They might not know, and so. Generally a naive me would have been like, well, most people will be testing out new decks because they know Meat Hook's going to get banned. And just anytime you lose to Meat Hook, just don't count it and move on. But I know that's not what's going to be like out there. It's going to be all Meat Hook massacres. And so my deck that, I'm hoping is better now that Meat Hook is banned. I'm not going to get to test it at all if I play right now. So it's sort of relying on streamers who are going to be playing on MTGO to tell me what's good.
Yeah, so that's really frustrating. Now, we should just talk about our feelings about Meat Hook because we talked about it last week, and so we should just reiterate it because we don't need to go deep into it. But for the most part, like I think you and I both agree, Meat Hook should have been banned, and I'm happy it's gone.
Yeah, I didn't love the way they phrased it, which was essentially black is too good, so some black thing needed to go, and we were like, Meat Hook's been around a while. I don't think that's even necessarily true. Like, I like that they're acknowledging that black is too good, but I think we had plenty of equivalent options and just kind of chose this one because it's been around the longest isn't true. Like this one actually is the best one to ban. It's the one that's sort of warping the metagame the most. So I don't really know why they worded it that way. But I do agree that like we've been saying Meat Hook's the best card in Standard for a very long time, and also been saying it's been pushing out aggro for almost since the card was here because it's just so hard to play an aggro deck against this card.
Yeah, I used to be almost strictly playing mono white weenie stuff, and you can't against you can't. I know that there's some people that have been saying that they like still play Celestia tokens or whatever, but like who's playing Celestia tokens in Standard? Like, come on, especially with Meat Hook. So I don't know, whatever. Maybe your deck's the best deck or whatever, but all the mono colored or like the strategies that are all like bunch of little creatures low to the ground, you can't really play because you'll need to at least play some counter spells or something to deal with Meat Hook. Or I tried a couple different things, but it's Meat Hook really just ruins your entire day. So playing a deck that loses to that one card that's in every deck because it's so good, it's not really worth playing that deck anymore.
And that it's still so good against non-aggro. If it's like, it's just such a silver bullet against aggro, maybe you sneak out game 1, you do the usual aggro thing and try to win game 3 on the play. I mean, like that could be your strategy, but they're main decking it because it's still just so good. Like, you'll play random mono black or whatever Grixis mirror match, and half the time you're sitting there like, well, if they draw Meat Hook, I'm gonna lose, or like, and if I draw Meat Hook, I'm gonna win. And so it's like, this card is just so good against aggro, and then just also so good in general that it really pushed out aggro, because everyone has 4 copies, whether it's like 2+2 or whatever.
Yeah.
There was always 4 in the 75, and probably at least 1 or 2 in the main deck. I tended to main deck 2 personally, but like, having it gone is going to change pretty much everything. Like, we used to talk occasionally about, oh, maybe Liliana's the best card, but it was sort of secretly like, we all know Meat Hook's the best card, but like, now we're talking, now that Meat Hook has impacted the metagame, what's like the best card? Well, you can't go wide, you have to go tall, and that makes Liliana really good. You know, that kind of stuff. Now that Meat Hook is gone, you know, it's hard to choose exactly what the best card is, but my initial guesses would be Fable of the Mirror Breaker is something you're going to go to that is a lot better now that there's not an easy card that just cleans it up. And of course, Wedding Announcement, again, just gets a lot better, and it was already pretty good, but now it's like its main enemy is sort of gone. And all this makes Liliana a lot worse, because if Wedding Announcement's the best card in the format, then Liliana stinks. So, you know, I still don't know if aggro will be good, because you still have to play against Wedding Announcement and the Wandering Emperor and stuff. So maybe a balls to the wall aggro deck that isn't playing those won't be able to beat it. So it might still just be, you have to be like, go wide white. Maybe go wide takes over. Who knows? But those are the cards now I'm looking to as, hey, maybe these are the best cards of the format.
Yeah. I was recently...
Fable of the Beer Breaker, you have your Wandering Emperor, your Wedding Announcement.
And of those cards, my favorite ones are Wandering Emperor and Wedding Announcement, because they're white, and they're both the same color, which is nice. So I was recently playing, like, I know that Arjuna, who used to have the Arena Craft podcast, he always would talk about his... He plays Bant a lot. Simic is his favorite, and he always wants to do Storm the Festival decks. So I ended up picking up a list of a Bant Storm the Festival just to see what was going on, and it was pretty fun. I had a good time, but a lot of it is like, you know, going wide, shield counters, all that kind of stuff. It just gets hosed by Meat Hook so hard that, like, wow, this deck would be so much better if I didn't have to deal with Meat Hook ever. And so now I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's finally Bant time. Like, maybe we can play some Bant decks. And you have counter spells for Liliana or whoever else you're worried about, plus all your Wedding Announcements, your Wandering Emperors. Maybe play a little bit of Elspeth. I don't know. Stay a little low to the ground, but not too much.
Definitely interesting. It might be enough to shake the all black mid-range metagame. I still expect the black decks are going to be pretty good.
They
don't like Grixis will still have answers, right?
Yeah.
To go wide strategies in its red cards. You might convince me that Drag Down can just be played in these 3 color.
I think so.
Black mid-range decks.
It's literally a Languish, like you were saying before, how strong Languish was. So if it becomes Languish, that is going to hose all these decks.
It's Languish that's going to get you sometimes where you only have 2 and you're like, fuck.
But I think
but for the most part,
with the Triumphs, you know, you're pretty safe. But I was excited because there's like Storm the Festival deck. A lot of these decks have this, but it's just fun to see and fun to do when you get to play. I think it's Grafted Identity is the blue card from Midnight Hunt, where you sack a creature and it's an aura and you steal forever one of their creatures. But specifically, if you're just putting it on a Shieldred and you're like, oh, I'm going to steal your Shieldred now. This is great. Everything's better. I can continue to attack you, and I'm going to draw a bunch of cards, and you're going to lose a bunch of life. Feels good. I don't know. I've always been on the Bant train, but it's taken me a long time to actually jump onto this specific deck. I've always seen the list, and I've never been interested. But this week I got interested, so I think I'm happy.
Yeah, I think Chris Patello had a list that a lot of people are playing. That's Bant.
I think, yeah.
Storm the Festival.
I like the standard play no swamps. I love it. No swamps standard.
Yeah. Personally, I've not been in love with Grafted Identity, mostly because there are so many artifacts and enchantments in the metagame that if you're me, I mean, I assume other people are doing this too. I'm loaded with naturalized effects in all my decks, and so Grafted Identity just gets blown up, and I get my creature back. Like, it's, everyone's running like 4 Reckoner Bankbusters. Their biggest sideboard bomb is like the Unlicensed Hearse. I guess Meathook's gone, so maybe there's less. You don't have to run quite as much Enchantment Hate, but you get your Fable of the Mirror Breaker. You have your Wedding Announcements. They're all out there, so I'm just like, yeah, I can play. Should I play 4 Beseiju or just 3? just 3. Let's put one in the sideboard.
Just one.
No, let's do 3 plus 1.
I get it.
I'm just sitting there like, oh, you sacked a creature to steal mine? I'm going to take that right back, but thank you. And I'm going to take it at a time that's opportune for me, and it's really going to blow you out. But I like the idea behind Grafted Identity, but I always just kind of laugh at it because it's like...
but the creature...
It sucks so bad when everyone is packing enchantment.
But the creature I'm sacrificing is from Wedding Announcement, so it's like, one of my 3 tokens I got.
Yeah, it's still a 2/2, man. It's still a Grizzly Bear.
I know, but not when I sacked it. Also, that one card got me 3 bodies. Whatever. Anyway, I'm like, I'll use one. It's okay. Also,
that's because Wedding Announcement's good, not because Grafted Identity.
If you get Grafted Identity off of Storm the Festival, you don't have to sacrifice the creature. So that is one upside. Just because it says cast when you cast it. So. Yeah. I'm not in love with Grafted Identity, but I like playing a random card. It's fun.
Yeah, I just remember the Bant deck I looked at. That was most of the reason to play blue. I think there was sideboard counterspells, of course, and then Denic maybe.
Yeah,
I can't remember anything else that was actually blue in the deck. So I was wondering, all right, since Grafted Identity isn't as good as it used to be currently, could we make this Naya? And just play Fable. Let's just play the good cards
instead of Denic. I could,
because the deck was almost all green white, and then it had Denic and Grafted Identity. And I'm like, do we get more out of red? I do admit the sideboard counterspells are something you're going to miss for sure. So it's something I was playing around with, and then they banned Meathook, and now I don't know what to do. But that was the next deck I was going to build, was a Naya version.
I like that.
And I was even like, ooh, we could play the 4/4 trample lifelink haste guy, because why not? We could play Arlen and actually have our creatures have flash. Maybe that's good. I don't know. But I was going to sort of take that shell, cut the blue, and put in whatever fun red cards I thought looked cool. But now I'm like, I don't know. What are people going to be playing?
Yeah, that is hard. I wonder if they're... No, because I don't think the 3-drop slot is overcrowded in that deck, so you would be fine. That does seem fun. And you don't hate...
Yeah, but then if everyone's storming the festival, I just want to play Dissipate.
That's true.
Or whatever the exile counterspell is.
Yeah.
I think it's Dissipate, right?
The...
Exile cancel.
Yeah.
Or is it dissolve? I always get those two mixed up. One of them scries and the other one
dissolve scries. I'm pretty sure. I like that though. That's exciting.
And then you just get to play all the 3 best cards that I listed: Fable, Wedding Announcement, and Wandering Emperor, all in the same deck. But I think you don't really get a replacement for Denic. If you want, why not? You don't get any good 2-drops, I don't think, out of red.
I love Denic. I really do. It gets cut down, but...
It gets cut down, but you don't care that much.
Exactly. That's why
I'm like... is coming back as like its better side.
Yeah. It's great. You know what card nobody should be playing?
What should we be playing?
No, you should not be playing. I don't know why. So Jeff, I want you to tell me why people are playing this fucking card. I do have to look it up because
So this is a card that people are playing.
yes,
And it stinks. I'm guessing from your lead.
I think it stinks. It's gotta be shitty.
Is it Reckoner Bankbuster?
No, but
that's got to be the most overrated card in the whole world.
That card. I actually am coming up on that card a little bit, but no, it's not that card. The amount of times I've lost.
So people are main decking it. It's crazy. You want this in post board games because post board games slow down and become more about card draw. People main decking it is crazy to me. Reckoner Bankbuster.
All right, this is the card I want to hear your thoughts on, and I don't know why I even try, but so it's a green enchantment. Teachings of the Kirin. Do you know what this card does?
Yeah, I do because I've played against it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Do you know why people are playing this card?
My best guess is that there are no good 2-drops really that give them another option. I know it started with Chris Patello's like Rite of Harmony green white enchantment stack, and it gives you 3 triggers on your Rite of Harmony. In a sense, it's an enchantment. It makes a creature and then transforms into a creature. So it's like, and I think it makes a random counter in the middle. So it seems reasonable if your deck is entirely built around Rite of Harmony. Then my hypothesis is that Chris Patello built this Bant Storm the Festival deck that everyone is playing and played it because he was playing it in his Rite of Harmony deck. And people just copied that. I find it hard to believe there's not something better for the Storm the Festival deck than this. I guess it's kind of good against graveyards sometimes if you get it to flip all the way and then attack with it. For the most part, this feels like worse than something like Gala Greeters or I'm a fan of the Courier's Briefcase. I would probably just play that.
I would play Gala Greeters myself, but
over Briefcase? Come on.
I would play Gala Greeters. In the green white deck where you're making a bunch of tokens, I'd play Gala Greeters for sure. You make so many treasures off of that instead. If you play Gala Greeters, it's going to get cut down. So,
but Courier's Briefcase is basically Innkeeper. You realize that, right? 1/1 with a treasure. And then it even draws you 3 cards later.
Yeah, but Gala Greeters makes a bunch of treasures with Wedding Announcement, and you gain life when you need it against Shieldred.
The treasures are tapped, though, man. They're tapped.
Yeah, you only have 1 treasure with the briefcase. You have to pay 2 more mana.
But it's untapped.
I don't want to pay mana for a treasure. Anyway, you could play both of them in the same deck because that makes a creature and then Gala Greeters makes another treasure. There you go. There's the combo. For sure, that's what you'd rather play. This just seems like Graveyard Trespasser at home is what it sounds like to me. Like, oh, I could exile some of your cards.
Yeah, it seems like terrible Graveyard Trespasser. Yeah. And since people are playing Dennick, it doesn't even get that done.
Because you're playing Dennick.
I thought it was a sideboard card.
Yeah.
For a longest time because I'd only happened to run into it in like game 2s, and I was like, why are they bringing in Graveyard Hate against me? Like, I don't care about the graveyard at all. This is super weird. And that's when I realized this is like a main deck card.
Teachings of Kirin are like, it's the top of my list of cards I put in my deck so I can sideboard them out. That's what it is. This is the It was in the list. I don't know what else to put right now. I'm very excited to side it out for game 2 because this is terrible.
The funny thing is, I think the list I've seen has like 1 Gala Greeters, so they know Gala Greeters exist.
That's the list.
They just don't. They just don't.
That's the list I saw, and I was like, well, they must know better than me. And then I played it. I was like, I'd much rather have 4 Gala Greeters than 1 of these if I even play this at all.
And I'm pretty sure that's Chris Patello's list, and he definitely knows better than me.
He does. So. Chris Patello knows a lot better than me.
I don't know the reason.
I don't know the reason either. Anyway, I don't need to shit on Chris Patello because he's way smarter than me and is way better at Magic than I am. So I could easily be wrong, but I just want to put it out there. Hey, Chris, if you're listening right now, please come on the podcast and tell us why Teachings of the Kurin is worth playing.
He's going to tell us for like an hour and a half about why the card is awesome. I would
love that, honestly.
Sit there like,
that would be great. If Chris Patella came on the podcast and just started talking, we got to drink the whole time. Amazing. If he could drink, I don't know if Chris Patella drinks, but if he does, and he drinks a lot and then tells us why that card's good, that sounds like an amazing Saturday afternoon. Like, ugh. With that, Jeff, I think that my beer is empty, and we should go on a beer break.
Same.
This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
That's right. You're already supporting the show just by listening. But if you want to support the show even more, the Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on your favorite co-host by either buying me a beer
or buying me a beer. So go to patreon.com/arenaregulars to vote on your favorite host.
Or if you'd rather send us beer emojis, you could do that by joining the Arena Regulars Discord channel. The link is in the show notes.
Ooh, I got something big and plump for you this evening, Jeff.
Oh, God.
As it says, it's plump and unfiltered. Though, as I'm pouring it, it looks fairly filtered to me. Anyway, this is from Flying Monkeys. It is their juicy ass IPA. Juicy ass IPA. It's an American IPA. There's a lot of funny, juicy, plump, sticky, weird, soft words on this thing all over the place. If you know what Flying Monkeys cans look like, they have a bunch of like just tons of art everywhere. But this is one of their mainstays. So we're picking two beers that you see a lot, but you never think to sit down and actually drink and appreciate and think about them. So that's what we're doing tonight. So this is Juicy Ass.
Yeah, this one, I remember when it came out and was sort of everywhere. And just like with the Space Invader, it's just like, no matter what bar I go to, sometimes friends recommend a bar and you're like, they're not going to have a great craft beer selection. They still, is a pretty good chance they have this. Mm-hmm. Same with Space Invader. So yeah, this was always like exactly like you said, it's something I've had before, but then I never tend to think to get it because I know there's always going to be another opportunity to have it.
Exactly. And this one, it's 6.5%. And specifically with juicy, the word juicy, not so much ass. But my brother-in-law, when he doesn't really like IPAs very much. He's much more like a lager pilsner kind of guy. But if he's going to drink an IPA, he's always going to pick something that has the word juicy on it somewhere. Juicy stuff or hazy tends to be the IPAs he likes. So this one in particular, he would probably look at it and be like, oh, it says juicy, so maybe I'd like it. I'll probably try this one, which is probably part of their marketing scheme in the juicy ass. With that being said, it kind of feels like an Unhinged joke? Back when Unhinged happened years and years ago, there was a bunch of ass cards. So I don't know. Wait, let me look it up on Scryfall. Is Juicy Ass a card?
Maybe the next one will be Unfiltered.
Hey, maybe.
And if Juicy Ass isn't a card, then it should definitely be in Unfiltered.
Oh, it's not. Juicy Ass is not a Magic card. I know Fat Ass is a card. So I was thinking Juicy Ass might be. But anyway, there you go, Mark Rosewater. When we make the next Unset, I know Unfinity just came out, but we want some more ass jokes. Back when whenever Unhinged came out, I don't remember. 2000 and
you could come on the show, drink some Juicy Ass, talk about the card Juicy Ass. We do have Chris Patello booked first, but after him, it's all you. And
Mark, if you want to do this while you're driving to work, that is perfectly fine. I know that you usually record podcasts on your way to work, so you can drink Juicy Ass.
I don't know if we should be condoning drinking and driving. So you're gonna have to take a taxi, Mark. But it could still be technically your drive to work.
Mark, if you want to be on the podcast and drink Juicy Ass and talk about the card Juicy Ass that you made just for us, we will send you a limo to drive you to work. and then you'll have your own driver, and you can drink juicy ass in the back. How about that?
There we go. It'll become fully stocked. It'll just be a limo packed to the brim with juicy ass in the back seat.
Jeff, let's talk about some spoilers for Brothers War, since we kind of glazed over
that leads
them.
us right into our main topic of new cards.
Yeah.
That are not juicy ass. Other new cards.
No, I'm waiting for whenever it happens, we'll talk about the juiciest ass on the Brothers War cards. But so far, I don't see any. Hopefully, there will be some at some point.
But yeah, I thought it would be interesting to at least we have enough information to start talking about the Brothers War. We talked a very small amount last week. I hadn't read the cards yet. I have read more of them since then. But we don't have like a ton, but we have some basic, really cool stuff that has happened, and then some actual, honest to goodness previews of new cards and some old cards. So we figured we have enough that it's worth getting some opening thoughts on this.
I thought maybe we'd start with the headliners, because they're the most exciting and the most fun. And the first one I want to talk about is the first one that I saw, but also the colors that I would probably want to be playing. So I'm sure you know which
Mishra,
card. Yeah.
nice.
No, obviously I'm talking about Urza, Lord Protector. So this is 1 white blue for a 2/4 legendary creature, Human Artificer at Mythic. It says artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then you can pay 7 generic mana. It says if you both own and control Urza, Lord Protector, and an artifact named the Mightstone and Mightstone and Weakstone, exile them and meld them into Urza Planeswalker, only activate as a sorcery. Of course, that means that we have to talk about the Mightstone and the Weakstone, which is an artifact that costs 5 mana, and it's a legendary artifact, Power Stone. And it says when it enters the battlefield, choose 1. You can draw 2 cards. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. You can always tap it to add 2 mana. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. That's so many readings right now.
You're not even halfway.
I know. So all these cards are like meld cards. So obviously Urza is going to meld with the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. I definitely thought it was the Meek Stone going into this, so that was new information for me. But off the bat, a 3 mana 2/4 that makes things cheaper. Sure, yeah, I could play that. And then a 5 mana / it could be 4 mana artifact that taps for 2 mana and draws 2 cards. I'm not super excited, or kills something, I guess. I'm not super excited about it, but it's all right. Anyway, if you spend the 7 mana, you get to meld them into a card that is too small for me to read at the moment, so I'm trying to get it bigger. So here we go. So you can meld them into a card that is Urza Planeswalker. It's a 7 loyalty Planeswalker. It says once during each of your turns, you may activate an additional loyalty ability of Urza Planeswalker. And it says you may activate the same ability twice. All right. So first off, that sounds very good as far as Planeswalkers go. That's usually
That's a really powerful static ability for a Planeswalker to have.
Hey, you can just do it again. Wow. So it says plus.
This Planeswalker counts as 2.
Yes. So it says +2 artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. You gain 2 life. You can +1 draw 2 cards, then discard a card. You can 0 to create 2 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. You can -3 to exile target non-land permanent. And then, of course, the ultimate is -10. Artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Destroy all non-land permanents. It starts at 7? This thing?
Yeah.
This card is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I can't quite see. Hold on. So I think the exile and the target non-land permanents are -3, you said?
Yeah.
I can't quite see It looked like a -1 to me at first. I was like, what the fuck? Just exile. I would just do that over and over again. -3 makes sense, but you could still flip this and do 2 things right away and still have this around. Like, that's crazy. Obviously, they were smart enough to not get you to ultimate ability with the plus right away, so you can't like plus ultimate as soon as you do it. Obviously, if you get this thing, it's insanely powerful. Also, the first time I read it, because again the text is so small, I didn't see the this turn in the +2. I was looking for an until end of turn or something at the start or beginning of the sentence, and I didn't see it. The this turn is like in the middle, and I was like, is this like an emblem that makes everything cost 2 less? Because that's ridiculous. But yeah, okay. So obviously the Planeswalker is outrageous. It's just about how likely you are to actually get there. Yeah. I think the answer is not likely in any reasonable game. So then it becomes more about the individual cards and just what we think about them. They have to be very careful with Urza, Lord Protector, because the way I see this being played, if it gets played, is in like an egg style thing where you have a bunch of 1-mana artifacts that are just free because of this. For whatever reason, you're picking up value from playing those artifacts. Maybe they cantrip, and then you have some storm type thing. So when they print a card like this or put it in the file, it's them acknowledging that very obvious that's where like the competitive community's mind is going to go first. So you're basically not allowed to print like 1-drop cantripping artifacts, which I think they shouldn't be printing anyways. So I'm choosing to be optimistic that the fact that this card is here means they're not printing garbage like that, and that's great. Of course, given the track record, there's a distinct possibility there's like 3 of them, and then that's just the best deck ever, and it's just Urza plus all of these stupid 1-mana cantripping artifacts that pick up incidental value along the way. But overall, I think it's a risky card for them to print, because making artifacts cheaper, like making instants and sorcery cheaper, has proven to be good enough that it's generally played. And then artifacts has the potential to kind of go crazy, especially when there's a few sets in a row that will contain a lot of artifacts. Now they have to always be thinking about it. But I think what I like most about this is just the dream they're selling of the turn 3 Urza, turn 4 Mightstone, Weakstone, turn 5 flip. I like how all the numbers really line up there. If you chain them together and nothing gets disrupted, that's the dream, right? Like Urza's on turn 3, Mightstone, Weakstone now cost 1 less. You play it on turn 4, and then you can use that 2 mana for Urza's ability on the next turn. You can't use it to cast non-artifact spells, but you can use it to activate abilities. So then when you get your 5th mana on turn 5, you have the 7 you need to transform. So I really like that design. Obviously, your opponent has to be doing nothing for this act to actually work, like not disrupting it at all. But I just love that they made those numbers all line up in such a nice way.
One thing that's really nice about Urza is that it does survive cut down. So at this moment in this world where we're looking at every 3-drop and 2-drop being like, does it die to cut down? This one doesn't. So that's nice. At least they will have to spend more than 1 mana at the moment to kill it. But I agree. I like that lineup of the Mightstone, the Weakstone going straight after Urza and then flipping immediately. And I've been playing that like mono blue. What is it? The Hadi Jin deck. And so even just having your instants and sorceries cost 1 less is huge. And being able to play Negate and Essence Scatter for just a single blue mana is strong enough. So I could see some sort of place where you're not even abusing artifacts if hopefully, like you were saying, they don't print cards like that. Just being able to play a lot of your other instants and sorceries for 1 single mana could be extremely useful. We will have to see what other artifacts are being made. But I still hold on that they aren't going to make something busted. It's going to happen. This set will not be busted. It's going to be fine.
I don't know. This card worries me on that front, man. I agree that. So I think I said when this card gets played, it's for that busted reason. No, what I meant is like when this card is really busted is when that happens.
Yeah.
I actually think this card could range from like sees no play to totally busted, and it just depends on the environment around it. But I think this is a really good card, making all of your sort of non-creature spells essentially, obviously non-enchantment as well. But okay, artifact, instant, sorcery cost less is a very strong ability. And these cards tend to, when they're blue, which they always are, I guess, tend to have the play pattern of you don't drop it naked on turn 3, you drop it on turn 4 and hold up a negate kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think the most likely outcome here is that Urza is just pretty good and ends up in, if he ends up cracking the line to make play, okay, then he's in the deck. And then the question is, do you play like a 1 or 2 Mightstone and Weakstones just to really, like, just as a powerhouse play that will happen sometimes, that you get the this Urza Planeswalker that changes the game? Because I think the Mightstone and Weakstone is a totally reasonable card when you have Urza, because 4 is so much more reasonable for this effect than 5, and the threat of activation really makes your opponent do something. But the card is so underwhelming when you don't have Urza. So it's going to be one of those things like, how many Mightstone, Weakstone do I play? Even in my 4 Urza deck.
Exactly. Right now, we are already playing a draft with Meteorite, which I don't like as a card, which is a 5-mana rock that deals 2 damage. So this is a 5-mana rock that taps for 2, only for artifacts. Or sorry, non-artifacts. And but it does kill something. So like, -5/-5 is no joke. Like, you can kill Shieldred, you can kill a lot of stuff, just about everything you want to kill. And drawing 2 cards if you need to is super helpful. So,
right, and like one of the abilities is good against creature decks, and one's good against
control.
Like one is still reasonable against control. I mean, this thing's never going to resolve against control probably unless they wanted to. But yeah, like maybe this card is just okay. It's just like 5-mana legendary. It's a lot.
It is a lot. I just meant like 5-mana rocks. I almost immediately like, nope, no, this is horrible. I'm never going to play this card ever. And so this one is selling me a little bit. But overall, I'm not super excited for this, and I'm going to have to let people show me how good it is. But right now, it seems busted, but it seems like a dream that's never going to come true. I'm not there. I'm off it. I'm pretty off it, even though it's white-blue.
Yeah, I'll probably be looking to play an Urza deck, and then I'll throw one of these in. And then when you only have one, you never draw more than one, obviously, so the legendary thing doesn't happen. And, like, there are just going to be games... Like, there will be games that you just win because you draw these 2 cards. But the question is, was that a game that Urza wouldn't have won on its own?
That's true.
Like, the Urza didn't die, right? So it's like, okay, the Urza is making everything cheaper. Would you have just won the game anyways in a situation where the opponent could not kill the Urza? And that's the question that really needs to be answered for Mightstone and Weakstone to see play.
That's true. What is helpful is that if you do, well, I guess never mind. This isn't super helpful because if you do happen to flip Urza into Urza Planeswalker, you can play your other Urzas and your other Mightstone Weakstones just because. But
I don't think that's nothing.
It is helpful, but you're probably winning the game already. So like your extra copies.
Yeah, again, like what are the games where the extra Urza was necessary to win?
I guess if you +2/+2, your Mightstone Weakstone costs 1, and you draw 2 cards off of it, that's pretty good, and you gain 2 life. Okay. Or kill something. I wouldn't hate that, but...
But again, like
That's
it
so
doesn't matter
many-
what's in your hand. If you flip Urza Planeswalker,
Yeah, there's so
you
many.
probably win.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I just don't see that being super reasonable. Let's move on to his brother of the Brothers' War, Mishra. Jeff, do you want to read Mishra and all the pieces of Mishra for us?
Yeah, love to. Okay, so let's start with Mishra. Claimed by Gix, 2 black red for a 3/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian human artificer. Whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures. If Mishra claimed by Gix and a creature named Phyrexian Dragon Engine are attacking, you both own and control them, exile them, then meld them into Mishra Lost to Phyrexia. It enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So then you might wonder, what is Phyrexian Dragon Engine? It's a 3-mana 2/2 artifact creature, Phyrexian Dragon, with double strike. When it enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. And it has unearth 3 red. And they meld into Mishra Lost to Phyrexia, which is a 9/9 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Artificer. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose 3. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Mishra deals 3 to any target. Destroy target artifact or planeswalker. Creatures you control gain menace and trample until end of turn. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 until end of turn, and create 2 tapped Power Stone tokens. A lot to unpack there, but you get a giant 9/9 creature that attacks and does 3 things. Unlike the Urza Planeswalker, I don't think you could choose the same thing multiple times, but I'm not.
You can't.
I'm not even 100% sure.
No,
on that.
you can't.
Yeah,
you can't choose the same thing multiple times. But oh my god, how much more exciting is this? Especially because black and red are good right now in standard. Like, look at this. Look at this. Especially because one of your pieces can be in the graveyard. You can dump it could die. You know, turn 3 Phyrexian Dragon Engine. It's a 2/2 double strike. It gets killed because duh. It goes to the graveyard. You can unearth it. Then turn after you play Mishra. It's so awesome. This card's so cool. Fuck. Why is the white blue one not as cool to me?
Yeah.
Maybe I should be.
Plus, I was gonna, just the pure badassery is
so cool.
off the charts here, relative.
It's so cool.
All right, so one thing that I just realized while reading that card that I did want to mention is I really like the if you both own and control. I don't know if that was the same templating from the previous meld. I don't have the memory sufficient, or the. Frankly, I'm just not going to look that up right now, but it makes sense for them to say that, so you can't like active treason something and meld it on your side, and like they just don't want to deal with that kind of shenanigans. So. You have to both own and control both things. This one to me seems like the opposite in the sense that the Phyrexian Dragon Engine is the card you would probably just play in a lot of decks anyways. And then the question is, how many Mishras do you play to get this like bonkers thing that happens? Because the Mishra is a 3/5 without haste and that has to attack to do anything. 3/5 for 4 that then requires you to do something next turn for it to be good. That's not very good. Again, the numbers are really nice where it's like 3 mana for the Dragon Engine, 4 mana for Mishra, and as you said, the Dragon Engine's probably dead, so the 5 mana on the Unearth is what triggers it the next turn. But it's sort of the opposite, where the Mishra itself is not a very good card. The Phyrexian Dragon Engine seems good enough to me. Like this is reminiscent to me a little bit of what's that card but just the fact that when this comes into play you get to discard your hand and draw 3.
The Ox of Agonis.
Ox of Agonis, thank you. Yes. And it comes back from the graveyard. Like it has a lot of Ox of Agonis going on, but it's definitely more aggressively slanted than the Ox was. So, this is also super interesting design. Where again, I could see this Dragon Engine range, I think the high end on it is less than Urza, because in decks where Urza's good, it's just like it's stupid busted. This is always just like really solid, and there's enough graveyard hate going around these days that it's hard for this to get out of hand. But I could see this being like, people don't play this to, it's a significant part of the metagame.
Yeah. What I really like about, well, one thing I wanted to say is that Mishra, when it comes down, it actually, so it says whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life. So it's not when Mishra attacks, right? It's whenever you attack. So if you have other creatures, you still get that trigger when it comes down. Not huge, but helpful.
That's true. But yeah, it still does something sometimes on the turn it comes down.
But I really like the way that they built all of these pieces to kind of counteract each other, because if you happen to get the Mishra thing going and you get Mishra lost to Phyrexia, the melded creature, one of the modes is destroy target artifact or planeswalker. So you could immediately just destroy Urza planeswalker if that happened to happen. Like, that's one of the things you can do. Also, Urza planeswalker can exile target non-land permanent, which is that. But also, the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, when it attacks Urza, it has double strike and they will trade because of just how it works out. But Mishra and Urza will bounce off of each other. But also if the Mightstone and Weakstone come down, they can kill Mishra. I like all those numbers.
Mishra, yeah.
All of them they all work out. I really like seeing all of that interplay between the both of them. I don't think that's going to be something that matters in Standard, but I like the way that they have orchestrated that whole kind of dance. Is really fun. And just as you're looking at the cards.
Yeah, totally agree. That's super awesome. Even if, like you say, probably is never actually going to come in a like real game. It's just cool to think about that, and like that they thought about it, because it weaves together too well for it to all just be like coincidence. And I think that's cool, and that adds something to the cards for me. That like. That's how they all interact against each other. Yeah,
exactly. And being able to attack with your Mishra lost to Phyrexia, which is, I'm sorry, exactly what I want to do. You get to, so when it melds, it enters the battlefield. Is that right? Yeah, exile them and then meld them, they come back. So you meld them together, you land, you get to mind rot your opponent, deal 3 damage or something. But a big one I think is getting lost is like your creatures get menace and trample because you're already in combat. And feasibly, you probably have a lot of creatures if you're already playing Mishra, so which likes having lots of creatures. So being able to give them menace and trample, that's like, all right, your opponent's dead. Or all their creatures get -1/-1. All their tokens are dead, which now they're going to play a lot of tokens because Meat Hook Massacre is gone. So now your wedding announcements don't matter if they haven't flipped yet, or they all become 1/1s. I don't know. This seems like I'm so excited for this card. This seems so cool. I think you're right with.
I think the weirdest thing about this card is that it takes 2 attackers out of combat, or this is tapped and attacking, right?
Yeah.
So it takes 2 attackers out of combat and produces 1 that. I guess if you give,
you can give it trample,
then it can be chump blocked. But yeah, if you're giving it trample
and menace,
it can be jump blocked. Okay,
you can give it menace and trample, and kill. Deal 3 damage to something. I don't know. The only one that I'm like,
yeah, no, this thing's probably game over.
It's so cool. It's so cool. Yeah. I mean, like, maybe they're playing. I don't.
And I love that Meld lets them have this creature. Mm-hmm. Without it just being a reanimator thing. Like, sure, you put this creature in the set, I'm just going to reanimate it now. Because it's Meld, you can't. You
have to put the 2 pieces.
Or at least the reanimator is like a 2-part play now. Mm-hmm. But they can't just put Mishra Lost to Phyrexia as a card with 12 mana or whatever as its casting cost, because people will just try to cheat that, and that's what that means. Whereas this is going to force you to do it honestly. Like, there's no real way to cheat this. You have to do it this way.
Exactly. This card is sweet. The other meld cards that have happened, that like the Bruna one and the whatever the other ones for the other set were, I can't remember. Always seems like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know. This Urza one's like, oh, that's cool. It's a planeswalker. But this one is the one that Mishra is the one that I'm like, this is cool. This is. I'm very. It got me pumped. Before I was like, oh, okay, meld, yeah, okay. But this, I don't know. I'm stoked.
And it's just like fast forward, and it's just people discarding Phyrexian Dragon Edge into their Lilianas. They don't even play their Mishras. They unearth them later to draw 3 cards. Like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true. But it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is what preview season's all about.
Exactly.
It's hyped and psyched for stuff like this. And this, people will try to make, like, the payoffs here are fun enough that people will try to make this work. You're probably going to be playing against these cards, even if it's maybe not, they're not the most competitive, because somebody's going to love them.
Yeah, because how could you not love them?
Yeah.
So awesome. So as far as our other previews go, there are just a few. We don't have to spend too much time on them. Jeff, there's only 4 really of the real cards. Is there one you want to talk about in particular?
Yeah, I think the one that's most interesting to me is the land.
Okay.
So here we have Mishra's Foundry. It's a land, it taps for colorless. You can tap 2 to make it a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature until end of turn. And you can pay 1 and tap it. Target attacking assembly worker gets +2/+2 till end of turn. So this is a callback to really old school land. Can't remember the name of it now. Mishra's Workshop is the other one. But basically just getting creature land back in standard, I think, is going to have a big impact, because creature lands were everywhere not 2 months ago, and now there are none. And I think a lot of decks are kind of missing that, especially in some, like, if you want to go play more of a controlling deck, it's just so much easier when you have access to reasonable creature lands. And these things, like, this is a really cheap one. Two to make a 2/2, and then they pump each other up, so you don't have to commit all of them into 2/2s. Definitely an interesting design here. It's a weaker version of the classical effect, but of course that's the way it's gonna go.
Yeah. So the other card is called Mishra's Factory, which is basically the same thing, but
yes, thank you.
Yeah, it costs. I looked it up, so it's not just off the top of my head, but so it costs 1 to activate to make a 2/2, and then you only have to tap it to give an assembly worker +1/+1. So this is fixed because that one was pretty busted. Because that's really just.
And I think if I remember correctly, it didn't have to be attacking, so you could block with it and tap it to pump itself.
Yes, that's true.
Or
you don't have a blocking 3/3. You have to be attacking with this, which I like. It goes in the flavor of the rest of the Mishra stuff.
I think it's still pretty good. Like, the fixed version still looks pretty good to me.
It looks good. It's just hard because, like, the colorless land that I'm thinking of that's a creature land was Faceless Haven, and that card just feels so much better than this one. I don't have to have multiples to make it a real threat. That one had vigilance. I don't know how much of an impact this card's actually going to have, but I will be excited to have them, and I'm going to pick them up if I see them in draft. But besides that, I'm not. I don't really know. It's another one of those show me why it's good kind of cards. Which I'm pretty sure Faceless Haven was one of those cards. So yeah, we'll have to see. Before we move on,
I think you might find out.
Yeah. Before we move on to the other portion of this kind of spoiler thing, I did want to ask you a question. So we have seen the Power Stones as far as the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, as well as Mishra lost to Phyrexia creates 2 Power Stones. We have also had a card recently come out called Karn Living Legacy that cared about Power Stones. My question to you is, do you think that Karn Living Legacy will get better with this set because of the Power Stone theme? Is this going to be a card or a Planeswalker we will be playing that we will actually care about in the future?
Yeah, so the answer to question one is yes, obviously it'll get better. The second part is where I'm not sure. Like, I still think it's relatively weak Planeswalker. Even in a all I care about is artifacts deck. Now, I understand the idea behind the second ability. Oh, I have all this artifact mana. I just tap it, and I get to look at all these cards, and I get to take one. It's like, yeah, but that's not how artifact decks want to play, generally. So that's an effect you would use in the late game after sitting there generating all these Power Stone tokens. It just seems too slow to me, and artifact decks, they don't tend to be slow. Like, I don't know, just traditionally, artifact decks are fast. That's the sort of advantage, and the reason is they want to take advantage of having better mana than the opponents, essentially, where it doesn't matter what color of mana they have, it just matters the number of mana they have. So it makes sense for them to either be a ramp deck that tries to quickly go over the top of you, or, you know, like an affinity style thing where they're trying to go under you. But they tend to be very, very fast decks like Tron and all these types of things, because their cards are ostensibly less powerful because they're colorless. The advantage is I can get them all out faster because it doesn't matter if I drew Mountain, Swamp, or all red and no black. You know, that doesn't happen to me. So Karn seems like just a bit of an identity crisis, where it's a very slow card for a deck whose natural advantage pushes them towards being faster.
Yeah. All right. I think that makes sense. I was hoping that Karn's Power Stone thing would be more of a big deal. I'm going to see throughout the kind of previews for Brothers War to see if that continues to be the case. But I think I'm probably leaning towards your side of, hey, the Power Stones aren't the same as the ones from Dominaria when we went back to it, where they care about the number of Power Stones you have. These ones don't. They just are what they are. So not exactly the same. It's fine. Whatever. No, it's good. The last thing I want to talk about today is with Brothers War, we will be going back and having some more cards. Basically, in each set, or each booster pack, we will be getting a retro-themed artifact that is from throughout Magic's history. This is similar to the, Mystical Archives from Strixhaven, where they had a bunch of spells. Well, now it's going to be all artifacts. This will impact, obviously, the draft format. However, in Arena, it will also impact our historic format, because it just gets whatever comes out and whatever happens. Last time we had a bunch of artifacts that were busted, but ended up being, not artifacts, instants and sorceries that were busted, that were immediately banned from historic. So basically, you know, we talked a little bit about injecting cards directly into historic and that format altogether earlier. But with these cards, just what do we think? Are we happy about this? Is this something we want on Arena? Is it something that just kind of is there, and do we want to even pick them in the draft if we're not going to be able to use them in Explorer and Standard? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, generally it depends on what this all looks like. I enjoyed the effect that Mystical Archives had on the Strixhaven draft format. I thought that was kind of cool, without being like, this is all that matters in the draft, which is definitely the risk you run with something like this. And I think artifacts are going to be even more towards the, like, this probably doesn't matter that much in draft, because a lot of artifact cards are niche and specific. But then on the other hand, you can always take it, because no matter what colors you end up in draft, you could probably play this artifact. So I think it'll behave a bit differently, but ultimately have kind of the same effect where it just adds some like cool. It adds variance in a unique and cool way, I think. Mostly, I just love that they have the old artifact frames.
Mm-hmm. That is huge for me. Mono brown seems super cool, and not an arena thing. We might see remnants of this on arena with like card styles and stuff, but I believe all the commander decks from this set will be old border as well, which is huge. What if I can win? You know, hey, I want to buy a precon. All the cards are old border. What? I'm sorry, what? So that's exciting because you also get those old sick. Border lands. That's what you want. So that's pretty sweet. But I'm with you. Like, we'll see what happens with the draft format. Like, there's Howling Mine and Ivory Tower, Worm Coil Engine. Like, it seems like a pretty sweet draft format.
Early pick for the card you want to pack one, pick one, by the way. It's got to be Worm Coil Engine. It's hard to imagine there's going to be a card that you're more interested in seeing. Like, pack one, pick one than Worm Coil Engine.
It goes in every deck. It's awesome. And just, there's, it does die to Doomblade, but it does come back as whatever you want. So I think it's going to be really great for the draft format. A lot of fun because, some of those packs in Strixhaven where you got a bunch of rares was so fun trying to figure out where to go. We had a ton of fun playing with Stone Rain, all these old cards that like they really don't print anymore, So I think it's just it's fun to have extra variance in some of your packs for drafting and being able to be like, oh, well, if I want to play with this card, I have to do it right now because if I can't play it in Standard or Explorer. So I think it's a great idea. I'm excited for the rest of the cycle of, they did spells. Now they're doing artifacts. They'll probably do enchantments and creatures at some point. So, I don't know. And lands? I don't know. That's exciting.
I'm looking forward to the creatures one. That'll be cool.
Yeah. Extra creature in every pack. I don't know what they would do, but maybe they'll add Bob. That'd be cool.
I'd take that.
I'd probably take a Bob.
Then they'd have to do all of the ones that are like the player likeness. Right?
That would be cool. Meddling Mage.
Snapcaster.
That would be pretty sweet. A lot of them are really cheap creatures too. Anyway, Jeff, we're going to have a lot to talk about Brothers War whenever it starts coming out. But for the time being, we're still sitting in Dominaria United, and I'm really happy. Everything's going really well. Draft format is awesome. I'm happy with the new Standard format, and we'll see how everything goes with that.
Yeah, before all the busted artifacts come into play. And you'll be like, damn, I wish Standard, I could play my black mid-range deck at Standard, but no, I just have to play artifact.
Mono decks. Brown. That could be mono brown. Anyway, Jeff, let's go to last call. Let's talk about these beers and get ourselves to bed. Maybe is the good way to say that. As always, we rate our beers on a scale of bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And this has nothing to do with what tier you are in currently, because everyone should probably be playing constructed events anyway, so it doesn't really matter what tier you're in on Arena. With that being said, bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. You have to pour them out. You can't even drink them because they're just...
Silver beers are so they're macro brews or beers that don't have anything going on.
Yeah, gold beers are fine. You'll drink them. You see them. You have them every once in a while.
Platinum beers are one step up from that. They're solid, and you would drink them again.
And diamond beers are exceptional. You really like these. You bring them to parties. You show them to your friends. You're like, I buy this when I can. I like having this in my house.
And then mythic, these are the best of the best. You will recommend these to anyone who will listen. Maybe you'll go out of your way to get these ones. These are just top tier.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jeff, with that being said, do you have a beer for this evening that has one? Do you know which one you would like to pick?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Space Invader.
Juicy ass.
Wow.
We went for the swapsies.
We got a big old swippity swap. Yeah. Jeff, let's talk about Juicy Ass while I still have some in my glass. Please tell us why you picked Juicy Ass for this evening.
Yeah, I actually thought I've had both these before, right? But just never really back to back. I thought I was going to pick Space Invader. I think Juicy Ass is fine, and this more or less is in line with how I remembered it. It's just kind of a totally reasonable example of these sort of juicier IPAs that your brother-in-law likes. I don't have too much else to say. Like I don't think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it's totally fine.
I also think it is fine, but I don't think it is a good example of a juicy IPA, which is interesting. Okay. Usually I feel like juicy ones feel a little bit more fresh or mouth-watering-y. I don't know what the word is for that. But this one is kind of what I remember it being, as something I'm not... I guess maybe the word juicy in my mind also slides into hazy and also slides into like actual juice ones where they don't taste as bitter, and this one still has a lot of bitter notes, and just would probably throw me off if I was expecting something different. I still think it's a perfectly reasonable beer, but it's definitely not one of my favorite IPAs, and it's gonna stay there. It's okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of think it's gold.
It's gold.
Like, just the fine, but I won't drink it often
Yeah.
is just the perfect descriptor for it.
Yeah. It's definitely gold.
I guess that belies what I'm going to rate the Space Invader. But.
Yeah, Juicy Ass is for sure gold, and I tend to avoid it. At that category where I'm like I've tasted it before, being like, oh, I like this one. I was like, oh, maybe I don't like this one. Then tonight was like, you know what? I do like Flying Monkeys, but I don't like Juicy Ass very much. I love the name, don't like the beer. Space Invaders IPA. I didn't love this one when I first opened it, but liked it better than the Juicy Ass. It's still gold. It's just like a little bit above it. I think it's so funny because like these are everywhere, and there's a reason we haven't ever brought these to the show, because like we're not huge fans of them, and you can't find them everywhere. But I just don't like it very much. I just don't think it's very good. It also doesn't have any juicy qualities, but doesn't promise juicy qualities. So it's gold.
Yeah, it's gold. This one's maybe the descriptor hazy is better than juicy, like you were talking about earlier, how those are often pinned together. And it's probably why neither of them actually call themselves East Coast IPAs. Yeah. Or at least Juicy Ass, I'm looking at it, calls it American IPA. It's like that's a lot of different possibilities, but that it's gold as well. And I thought that coming in, I was like, we're going to give them a shot though, and I assumed I would prefer Space Invader, but that they were both gold. Coming out, I'm like, you know what? I think having them back to back, I might prefer the Juicy Ass, but they're both gold, so it's not like a strong preference. But like I was sort of alluding to, the way I think about these beers is like, because they're widespread, they will tend to be at bars that otherwise only have silver beers. And so that's sort of my experience with these, is I order these when the alternative, like the other options, are just your generic whatever silver macro brews. And they'll tend to have an Amsterdam or Mill Street or something like that on tap. And then I'm like, well, this is still probably more interesting than those. And that's sort of the position they fill in my beer vocabulary, I guess.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great way of putting it, is that there are certain places that have flagship beers from certain spots, and the flagship isn't always your favorite, but it can be a step up from any other silvers that are around. So there you go. I did come into this thinking that I'd like Juicy Ass more than Space Invader, because every time I look at Space Invader, I'm like, no. But I was wrong. Look at that. Who knows? That always happens with these, where you're like, I for sure think that this one's better. And you taste them back to back, you're like, I was completely wrong. This one's so much better. I don't know why I ever thought the other one was better. So, yeah. Anyway, golds all around. Little sad one, but that's all right. Going into closing time. This is when we end the show. And if you have any suggestions for more gold beers or beers that are a bit better than that, you can always find us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You may also find us on MTG Arena itself under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
Actually, I have been playing on that account on my phone recently, so you will see that. Nice. Yeah, I was playing some of those free fun events where you could play the different... it was like an event where you could be Timmy, Johnny, Spike, or the Vorthos, or whatever they named that.
Gotcha.
And it was a lot of fun. And the Vorthos, because you could be a different person. So the Vorthos deck.
The Vorthos deck sounds fun.
It was very fun and very good because it was an omniscience game. And so the Vorthos was any card that cared about Bolas. And if you play every card for free, you just, for opening hand, Bolas. All right, play Bolas, make you discard 2 or exile 2 cards from your hand, and you just fuck them up real fast. So a lot better. Timmy was just Dinosaur Tribal, and you're like, okay, I'm sorry that I can play my amazing Bolas on turn 1, and you have to play like a 3-drop
Well, you know,
dinosaur.
it's like the interns who are building this one, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was a lot of fun. It was great to see that most everyone was playing the Vorthos one because they realized it was the best. Anyway.
The Vorthos one just sounded fun because it's story-based, and it's like, this event doesn't matter. I'd probably pick that one. To hear that it was like the strongest deck is surprising.
Because the Spike one was like, yeah, these are spiky cards, but yeah, they all cost like... The curve is at 3, but like when you're playing Omniscience, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So like, okay, cool. Yeah, this card would be a spike card, but when the mana curve doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Anyway, if you want to tell me what your favorite or what type of player you are, if you're a Spike, a Johnny, a Timmy, or a Vorthos, you can find me at Zulberg. That's ZULBERG on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
I do have Twitter. It's at BluesBrewsMTG, BLUESBREWSMTG, but the best place to find me is on our Discord. Once again, in the show notes is where you'll find the link for that.
Easiest place to find us. We also appreciate if you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, Spotify, and any place you can give us a review. Go on YouTube and find us there. Just means a lot. Not only does it help our analytics, but it also helps our hearts feel better about, we put some time into this stuff. So we really appreciate that. This has been the Arena Regulars,
reminding you that the hot new format for Worlds is going to be Alchemy, new Capenna draft.
Good night. All right, that's fine.